people are like, wow, this is magical. You're like, yeah, it only took me 15 minutes or it took me one prompt.
Welcome to episode 14 of Tool Use. This week, we're going to be covering 10 different tools that you should be leveraging in your flow in order to maximize your use of AI. If you haven't joined Tool Use before, it's a weekly conversation about helpful AI tools where we teach you what is possible today with real examples. Today, we're joined by Ray Fernando, a former Apple engineer turned prolific builder and live streamer, teaching the whole world how to code with AI. Ray, we're super happy to have you here today. Welcome to Tool Use. How you doing?
I'm so excited to be here. This is really awesome, and I'm excited to share a bunch of knowledge for your listeners. I got a lot of cool stuff in the books and even some other stuff that I've been cooking with that you guys would be so interested to check out.
I'm super excited. Well, how did you get into AI? Can you tell us a little bit of your story?
Yeah, the story is a little funny because it's totally non-conventional, and I feel like that's the story of my life. I used to be an engineer at Apple for 12 years, and then I came down actually with long COVID. So I got COVID in March of 2020, and then I was so sick that I really couldn't focus. Had brain inflammation, I really couldn't move. It was really kind of crazy. So I was going back and forth, and I had to take some time off. And then after several years, it wasn't getting any better. So that was really, really kind of scary for me. And then after that point, I was basically let go saying, hey, let us know when you get better. And then that's kind of, like what happened with me. I was like, oh, wow, what am I going to do with my life? And I started playing around with ChatGPT and I saw, wow, AI has actually come along a very long way. And that's only last year that I started playing with it. And then that's kind of what really opened up my eyes as far as like the potential here. I was still going through lots of brain fog at the time. So just had very limited cycles of things that I could focus on. And I had to figure out, how can I use these types of systems to, leverage my knowledge and other things I wanted to do. And that's kind of really how I started to kind of get into playing around with this AI stuff. As my health progressed in the following year, I started to see how much more intelligence, with GPT-4, and then also with the Claude stuff that was coming out, said like, wow, you can actually leverage these language models to do so much more for you than you can really realize. And I don't think people really understand the potential that's hidden behind these machines, or the discovery that these people have made. I think people in our industry totally understand, but the broader audience of the world doesn't really understand how much is going to impact all of their lives in every single industry. So it's going to be, computing, it's going to be cooking, it's going to be medicine, it's going to be every single thing you could ever dream of. And it's pretty obvious to us, but it's through this discovery process of playing with these models that I start to kind of find out about its powers and figuring out, especially having an engineering background, I want to figure out, what are the inputs? What are the outputs? Just letting my curiosity run wild. So that was kind of like how I got into the AI stuff and got into prompting and so forth. So that's a little bit of how I got started. Really, it's kind of like a weird story, but I also like going back even further before Apple. I basically dropped out of school, right? And I was just hustling along, working any type of gig. And literally it was, trying to do everything from like wedding photography to DJing to like, pretending to be on the radio station and being a student and stuff like that. All this crazy stuff in the world just to get my feet started and get off the ground. And, got all these lucky breaks and just kind of a door opens up and I just, run right to it because it's the right time.
Very cool. I love the story. When you started building with ChatGPT and other projects, were you doing something just for fun? Were you trying to solve your own problem? Was it even just like a contract for someone? How did you get into actually building with these tools?
It was literally just helping me write because I have severe dyslexia. So that's another problem. It actually started to come out a lot more through the brain fog that I didn't really realize I had. I had worked around it through audio, and all the techniques I was using for memorization were based off of video and audio. So whenever I would see something, it would instantly stick in my mind. I can walk into a room and memorize everyone's names. I can redraw stuff, just by looking at them. And I could tell you everyone what happened 6 months ago, who was standing where, and all these details. As you can imagine, it's immensely helpful if you're working on these really complicated build systems inside of a proprietary large closed source OS. And so it was just really easy to remember, oh, that change happened, 6 months ago, and that kind of led to this. And so that was kind of the beginning. It was like, I lost my ability to do that. And that was really scary. And I felt that my whole entire identity for how I do everything was gone. And I thought, how am I going to operate in life? This is a huge handicap for me. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I reached out to ChatGPT to try to like help me with that. It's like, okay, can you help me read these things? Can you just distill this down to something simpler? I can't focus for longer than a couple minutes right now. It's just so hard, or it takes that much more energy. And that was kind of the beginning of the power of this type of systems. And then I said, "Can you help me code?" And that was like a really crazy thing. It's like started writing more apps in Python, and started writing to databases and started doing things. It's like, this is really good. And this is only GPT 3.5, but hey, this is amazing. And then the 4.0 came out, and that was just an even bigger bomb. It's like, you're kidding me that this can actually like do this authentication. I could translate to a different programming language if I wanted to. And so then that really opened up my mind and said, well, I've always worked on client side software. Why can't I work on more web frameworks? I really want to extend all the things that I'm doing in Python into these other web frameworks, and that's kind of where this whole like, deep sea of abyss of, the language models kind of actually having more intelligence has really helped me uh, reach out and translate my ideas in my head out into these apps and things.
Interesting. I want to circle back on something you said earlier about how like we can recognize in our industry how important these machines are going to be for every single aspect of our life. And it's crazy when I talk to like friends that I have that aren't in this space, I'll be like, well, AI is doing this and it's doing that. And they're like, they'll nod and they'll be like, oh, it's crazy. Did you catch the game last night? And it's like they just don't even care. Like, it's like they're, or they'll do something where like, hey, I talked to ChatGPT once and it was terrible. I'm
That's
like, well, what
right.
did you ask it? And it's like, well, I just like asked it how it was today, or it was like some super simple prompt. And it's like, of course, it's not going to seem good if you don't know the right things to ask it. So it's like, it's been really tough for me to get my friends and family in on AI because it's a hard conversation to have. Because they're like, well, what do I get it to do for me? I'm like, well, what do you need from it? Do you try to get your friends and family to use AI? Is there anything you tell them to get the normies in on AI? Or
I agree. No, I do the same exact thing, and they just see me like so enthusiastic, just like incredibly. I was like, Ray, this must be serious because I don't normally see Ray just off the walls bouncing around about something that it's really interesting. So they use it, and then they come back to me like, hey, I try to ask ChatGPT to do this. Like, can you help me? And just my natural genius bar, Geek Squad, having work type of thing, just kicks right back in from like decades ago. It's like, oh yeah, this is what you do. But this is where I started to see this big dissonance or this large gap. And it kind of brings me back to my early days of Apple. Is like they cared so much about user experience. They cared so much about being like a user and trying to solve those problems. And so what most people don't realize, because it's all closed source, like underneath the hood is just a deep iceberg of decades and decades of code and stuff that comes together. I mean, all the way going back from next step, all that stuff is in there. Like all that stuff is in there. It's not a secret, right? It's like literally that is all running and somehow it all turns on. And there's just this magical experience that is really driven from that level on up. So that's actually kind of what I'm seeing right now. We have this unique ability with the way that AI is kind of booming. And I kind of want to remind people that we're still so early on this. And this is why I'm really excited about it, is that it's sort of our job right now as engineers to build these app experiences, to think about things as a user, just really sit and observe and ask questions and understand what people are kind of missing and to try to bridge that gap and try to figure out, are there frameworks that can help me get there? If your specialty is web, what are you doing in that space that can help you like bridge that gap so that you can bring a cool experience in? If you're working on client side code, what are the cool things or cool tricks that you can do? If you're really good at loading data, can you partner up with someone who is really good at UX? If you come together and then you guys are both like leveraging some of these AI capabilities, you can provide an experience that is so much more rich, or take over an entire industry, literally just with like a couple of people. And sort of like that's an interesting example to how I've started to get into my transcription stuff. I had no clue that people were paying up to like $7 a minute to have their audio transcribed when that can literally be done in like minutes, with these new language models. And it's very obvious to us, but the app experience is totally not there completely, right? People are trying these different things out. And I feel like there's a large opportunity, even just as that one example, but in many of these industries, where it seems obvious to us, like you're saying, but there's like like people are trying things and they kind of get stuck. And that's where you have to go in as an engineer and kind of, take off your engineering hat and then put on your like learning hat, and watch these people use their software and see where they're struggling. Because once you solve those problems, it becomes sort of magical to them, right? And that's hours of engineering, and that's what you do really well that you can solve. But it's like, don't come up with the solutions first. Just observe and see what people do. Try to make it as simple as possible for them.
Oh, great advice. Love living by that. As we're about to release the Open Interpreter desktop app, we've been doing a lot of the same, working with people, figuring out how to use it, how they're using it, what's the best way to approach it. But in regards to helping bridge the gap in understanding, would you mind sharing some of your workflows with us?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to share some workflows. I'm really excited because I have a couple of things I've been working on, and I think that some stuff would be really, really helpful. And I think the first workflow that I use a lot, especially as a live streamer, is to literally just transcribe audio. There's the first problem I had, and I thought, hey, it'd be a really good idea if I can, transcribe my live stream because there's so much knowledge in there. I had a 3-hour live stream. 10,000 plus people saw it in the first couple of hours, for using Claude, Sonnet, and, coding with Cursor. And there's just still many people watching it today that get so much value. And it's like, no one's going to watch 3 hours unless there's a huge burning desire to watch this type of thing. And if I could just share these snippets out, it would be super helpful. And how do I do that? I have to get the transcription out. I built an open source version of a transcriber app called the MLX Auto Subtitled Video Generator. I literally just forked this from an existing creator, and I wanted to leverage the power of these Apple computers to run these language models. And, this is something that just needed a very basic user experience, but the goal is just to drag your video in. And what you can do is just once it puts the video in, it'll just do the transcription using a Whisper language model. And depending on the power of your machine, this can take somewhere in the minutes range to tens of minutes to do the transcription. And then what it does is it generates basically a text file or SRT file. And, this was obviously written with assistance of AI code editors and so forth. But this is just like one of the tools that I started to use to make this thing. And it's what's great about it is it's open source. It's actually featured by Cocktail Peanut, which is a one-click button downloader app thing, which you can use to actually, run this thing. So I have some notes here on how you would actually install this. And so, you obviously need like a Python environment, Conda environment, and so forth. And, it's quite a bit to get set up if you're not familiar with writing code. And even if you do write code, it's still kind of a headache to sometimes, make sure your environments are correctly. And I actually ran into a problem. I made a little guide here that actually gets you set up running Python, so that you can actually run it on an M1 Mac. I accidentally installed the Intel version of the Conda. And so that really messed up all my dependencies, and I had to remove it and then reinstall the M1 version. So I actually wrote a full guide on my blog at rayfernando.ai. And that's also linked in here. But yeah, basically, I also, given the demand, I actually wrote a web version of this where you can actually transcribe the video. So I could show you the difference right now. So if I get a video, I'll run the current Python version so you can see the speed differences. So if we do browse files, and I'm going to get this one here with a video interview with Chris Latner. It's about 49 minutes long or so. You can upload this. So this is using the MLX video transcriber. And so this will just use the power of my local machine to do the transcription. And so as we see it going on here, you'll see it kind of running. It downloads the model if it's not downloaded yet. And then it'll just go ahead and start fetching the files and actually do the transcription. But the one I wrote for the web is actually a lot faster. Because as you see, this here is going to take quite a while to hit that 49-minute mark. I could just select the video, the same video here, and just have it done completely. Doesn't matter if you have a Mac or it doesn't matter if you have a PC. I'm making this app called raytranscribes.com, and this is just going to be done right over the web. And so it'll just process the audio on the machine and then generate basically the same transcript for you. And so this is something that I developed. I wanted to take my Python and extend this out into like a web framework and stuff. So I started to, learn Next.js. And in that process, I thought, hey, wow, it's a really rich framework that has an AI SDK. And here it is all transcribed. And if we check the one that's being done on my Mac, it's still at the 20-minute mark. So we're only halfway through the one that's running on my machine locally. And my web version is already done. And we had already kicked that off quite a bit later. So I'm going to quit this so it doesn't eat up all my machine resources. With this text file or this the SRT file, now you actually have these rich, documents that you can use to start doing some cool stuff. So this is actually, everything transcribed very accurately. And this is something that I needed. And so in my workflows, this is something that really used a lot. And I'm actually planning to launch this app uh, as soon as probably when this podcast is coming out, or when this podcast would be live. This is actually my app will be live. So people who are creators can use this. If you have a Mac, if you have a PC, you don't have to install any Python stuff. It's literally on the web. It'll be just as fast as this. And, I want to make it accessible to everyone so that they can use it. And so I think the next step here is like, now that you have this transcript, what do you do with it? And how do you get some information out of it? And so what I usually do is I basically just copy my transcript and I go over into Claude, and I have these projects here to generate like blog posts and do different things here. And so I have one that basically says generates a blog post from my transcript. So I made a second version here. And so with Claude, you can actually set up these projects and give it instructions. And what you can do is actually have it do some analysis beforehand and then have it generate the blog post. So all I do is just copy and paste that text into here and hit run. And this is literally like having your own app for you. And I would encourage people to use Claude projects a lot. I know sometimes you want to jump into code right away. Sometimes I do too. But I feel like this is a really fast testing ground to test my ideas and test prompts out and iterate. And so right now what it did is just generate this artifact. And this 49-minute interview with Chris Latner is now, has a complete blog post that I could just publish right here. Just as soon as the live stream done, there's interviews done, you just dump the whole audio in there. And you have like the entire analysis of the whole thing. And it actually gives you title recommendations, and it gives you like the AI analysis of like the main topics and key points. And it also even tells you the target audience. So if you're actually writing this stuff, you can actually figure out, okay, this is geared towards AI engineers or developers. That's really important to know. Also the emotional elements, who are you actually targeting, and what type of messaging are you going to do as far as title recommendations as well. And so a lot of these types of prompting stuff were inspired by some of the stuff I learned online through Twitter with people actually doing these major discoveries for prompting. And so I've been kind of diving deep into prompting, and I could probably share. I'd love to share this prompt with your listeners, as just as a bonus just for tuning in, because this kind of give you an example of how you can structure prompts and get some really interesting insights from it. And this is just probably one example of a workflow that you can design for people. And like how we were talking about earlier, for people who have, I tried to use AI, tell it to write my blog post. It's not going to write a detailed blog post unless you give it some detailed information. So that's where we kind of start out with something like this, like give it a transcript. And if you then just tell it to write a blog post, it'll still be okay. But with the insight here, and then like the leverage that we're leveraging is the instructions to do an analysis beforehand, to get the inputs, and then to find out the target audience. And so by telling the language model these additional instructions, and to kind of get it to focus and kind of say, okay, I want you to find the target audience. I want you to find the emotional elements. I want you to find any constraints, any relevant keywords and things like that. 4 to 6 like main themes, and then write a blog post. You're going to get a very rich document in the way that we did here. And this is just, one of many interesting techniques that I feel like you can leverage in these language models to just take your prompts and just make them 10x better. And then what you can do from here is then build a user experience on top of that. Imagine if I just release a blog post generator that just literally takes your transcript and just generate blog posts. That'd be cool. I might just throw up a landing page and see if anyone's interested, but that'd be really interesting. Yeah, because this is the blog post. And it writes everything about why we need a new programming language. So this is exactly what Chris Latner was talking about. He was explaining all these different problems, and Mojo is his platform there, and it actually kind of breaks down everything there with the key technical innovations as well. I mean, that's amazing. That's, to me, I'd be happy to post this up, with some review, and it gets you kind of started there, for getting your content to be out there. The other problem I realized is that once you have this like audio podcast, Google's not really going to find it online unless you post about it or write a blog post about it. So the impetus here is then to take this really rich content and produce things so that Google can start seeing, oh, Mojo, people are searching Mojo right now because Chris Latner was on this podcast with Joe Rogan or something. And so then you want your blog post to show up above everyone else's because, you want yours to be out there. And that's, the SEO game, you could say. But you do have rich stuff. This is a rich interview that was done at the AI Engineer Conference. And no one can discover it unless I post this. And I want people to discover it. I took this time to go record it, so I should post this. So I feel like that's um, kind of one of the ways that you can work. And so I thought it'd be interesting to also maybe kind of break into this new segment here with like, how do you start with a basic prompt and then how do you make it so advanced like that? Or how do you add more rich or more depthness to it so that you can get the language model to give you better output than someone else who's just saying, do like a one sentence task. And so the way that you usually do that is just, for me, I just start with a workflow. I literally will just go into Claude and I just gave it the SRT file, the entire SRT file. I was like, here's a bunch of data. It's not cleaned up or whatever. This is just, I'm planning to drop this file in. And then I literally just gave it that one line. It said, generate YouTube timestamps. And the timestamps will go in the description of the videos so the users can click on the timestamp. And so this is probably what most people will see when they tell that to do that. It may not even be that accurate. It's just going to be like, here's what I was thinking for this. And so then it's always good to continue to go back and forth with your prompts and stuff, because the goal here is to build up this basically this history of conversation so then you can get some instructions out of the language model later. So as we see here, the stream is about 3 hours and, I'm just giving the language model feedback saying, so I want the timestamps to go from beginning to end. You were off to a good start. So just kind of giving it an additional encouragement there, just in case the AI wants to come and destroy me. They were like, oh no, Ray's really cool. I'm going to go for someone else because this guy was really nice. So folks, it's really important to be nice to your AI. as we see there, the timestamps, so I just kind of giving it more iteration here. And I think the key thing that you should consider is like, once you have kind of what you're looking like, something that's really close to what you want to take this, and now you basically have created the machine that's going to stamp out everything else for the rest of your life, right? So like, it's like, doing a process by hand. You like the process. How does McDonald's make these burgers so consistently all over the world? Is that they've nailed down the process and now they can just copy it at every single location and everyone follows those exact same procedures over and over again. And so you get some repeatability. And then you also have some variability with water and various things, but it's still fairly down to a science. And I think that's kind of the way I want to think about these things as an engineer. So the technique that I use here, that you want to use if you're paying attention, folks, right now, is like, describe the technique you use to get meaningful timestamps out of such a long transcript so that other LLMs like you can reproduce the results. Please give the instructions in Markdown. Here are the timestamps you generated that were useful. So I'm giving it some feedback about timestamps that were useful, but also telling it to give it instructions on Markdown. And so there's something very special about Markdown that I've sort of discovered about a year ago when I was copying stuff from Notion over into ChatGPT. And what happens is that whenever instructions are in Markdown, the language model seems to follow them almost like exact with procedures. And there's another pro tip is that if there's actually numbers, it will actually use the numbers as a ranking system to saying number 1 is the highest priority. And if you have like number 7 or something, it may not get to it. It'll prioritize number 1. If you do Markdown with a list format, it'll try to follow the lists, in line by line. So there is actual hierarchy differences, and you want to play around with it just to see what can happen if it's not following instructions because you just gave it too many numbers. So just so you're aware of that. But what I find is if you just tell Claude to generate the Markdown, like if you have this just general idea and you just have a conversation with it in a chat and then say, hey, I try to do it and here's my prompt and please improve it. I'm not seeing number 7 execute. Please improve this and generate the response in Markdown. It's going to give you those instructions in Markdown in a better format because apparently it's really good at giving itself instructions. And so now we have this new instruction set that I can now use in Claude and generate this in a new project. And literally all I have to do is just give it a Markdown file. And you can open up a new chat window and paste that actual prompt in here and then continue to improve it. So the difference is when you open up a new chat window, what's nice is now you have a larger context to run. And for those who are just getting started with language models, once you kind of go very long with a chat, they also encourage you to open up a new chat window because then you can leverage more of the model's intelligence and it kind of helps it focus. So think about your desk in some way. If you have a desk and you have a lot of paperwork on there, sometimes you just need to clear out your entire desk and start fresh again so you can get just that one idea executed. You don't want to have too much stuff on your mind. And so the language models kind of behave in that same way. You want to, clear out the desk, open up a new chat to clear out its mind and kind of really get focused and really get into one specific problem so that you can solve. So experiment with that as it may. And so once you have these instructions, what you can do for me is that I want you to experiment and try different language models. And one of the ones that I've been playing around with lately has been the new Gemini Flash model. And that model has been extremely good at taking these system instructions I have for generating timestamps, and it generates very, very accurate timestamps. And so what I do here is just go to aistudio.google.com. And in those system instructions, I literally just put the entire markdown file in here. So I just put the huge SRT file in the text format, and I just tell it to, rerun, basically. Rerun. I think it's running now. It should be running. Yeah, so it's running at the bottom. And there it goes and generates the timestamps. And so one of the reasons why I landed with Google Gemini or why I'm using Gemini Flash, and you can try different models here, was because somehow this out of ChatGPT, GPT-4o Mini, all the different types of models, this one had the most accurate timestamps. And every model is going to be trained differently. So that's the other thing. Google actually may have a lot of training data on YouTube and timestamps and referencing types of languages. And so that's probably its advantage that no one's talking about. But you'll discover that as you play with it. So don't get discouraged if you don't get results from one model. Try different models, try different temperature settings, try different types of things that can actually change the result for you. And you'll be pleasantly surprised. Even just changing something as temperature can make a huge difference in your output. And so this is basically one of the basic run-throughs that I'm using to generate app experiences. So if you want to, generate an app, this is kind of like the workflow that you do it. So I actually made an app that I'm currently trying out right now. So this is like, I just generated this with Next.js. I went into V0 and I said, hey, let's just see if I can actually, generate timestamps with this. And so, like, for example, I'll get that one thing that we just made here. I'll just drop this in here. So all I have to do is just drag it in here. And the language model using Next.js is just going to stream back those timestamps for me. And here we are. There's an app,
Wow.
right? So we went basically from prompt to an app, all just through that process. And I spent a lot more time in the prompting phases because I wanted to make sure I had the correct output that I wanted. And once I was really satisfied with that, then it was just easier for me to move into the code phase to generate things. Because sometimes I could spend way too much time in the code. And this is just one of like many app experiences that you can make. But just think about it this way, how helpful it could be for other people and other creators to just get transcripts that quickly, just from these, types of SRT files. And so as you can kind of see, I'm building this like different sets of tools to help me as a creator in my process. And it all started with really like prompting, right? And prompting, I feel like, is sort of the gold nugget here because you're going to leverage the intelligence of the entire world. And, how do you do that? You basically start out with having a conversation, like you're having a conversation with an expert. Having that expert then tell itself to give it instructions so it can repeat that process over and over. Trying it out with these different models, putting in the files, changing temperature settings, various things. Once you're satisfied with that, you can generate an app experience that's going to deliver something just like what you're seeing here.
I'm wondering if, like, some problem I have with building is, like, I don't know when the right time is to jump into the code. And I think you've touched on it a little bit here, like, make sure you've got the prompts right, make sure you've got this figured out. But then it's like, sometimes I'll just jump right in and start coding, but then that's too early and I get locked into an architecture that's not good for the future. Other times, I've had the problem of like, okay, I'm going to start a project and I'm just going to live in prompt land. I'm going to live in Claude projects. I'm going to just dream up all these crazy different architectures and figure out the right one so I can, and then I end up just procrastinating too much and not coding enough. And so it's kind of hard to know when you've built the thing that is ready to be built in code. Do you have any like tips on like when to know it's the right time to jump into the editor?
That is such an important topic that you bring up because to be honest, because these are such small scale things, I literally build when I get inspired. So this UI was actually built, I think, on a live stream. I built this on a live stream because I was just itching to build. I was like, God, my mind was blown when I was using V0. They changed to this new chat format. it's much easier to generate UI. And then I was so inspired. It's like, what can I build in my workflow? And so I was inspired to just build the UI. So in v0.dev, I literally just said, this is my prompt. And this is kind of why it's important to play around with prompts. So I said, generate a very simple app where I can just drop a transcript SRT and it'll generate timestamps for my YouTube description. You can, help, and that's all I did. Like literally it created this, and I was like, wow, it actually works. I put the click here and then click the SRT file and stuff. And then, so here's like the first 15 lines as far as like a sample transcript. And then it generated like the new version for me. And for me, I just felt so inspired to build that I felt like I didn't necessarily need the code. I just needed an experience. And that's kind of what I was itching for. And you'll have these moments. And I want to deeply encourage anyone, if you're feeling in the code moment, just go code, If you're feeling like in a UI building moment, just go do the UI. You're going to get inspired by walking, and then they'll kind of play off each other because there is this like negative space that you create where you have to build a UI experience, but right now you're just in this moment. And as an engineer, if you're ever building and you're ever inspired, you probably get 10x to 100x more done than an engineer who's forced to code. And I think we've all been in that situation where you have like a P1 or you have like this high priority bug you have to fix. You're not that excited about fixing it. You're not that inspired, but it has to get done because the business needs it for whatever delivery. Where if you're more inspired, that same period of time, you would just have done way more in your research, or output is just way higher. And people are like, wow, this is magical. You're like, yeah, it only took me 15 minutes or it took me one prompt. It's like, it's whatever you're feeling in the moment. And I feel like that happens more often than not, especially if you're already kind of thinking about these things. You also have to think about your days. Like as an engineer, whenever you sleep, you have stuff on your mind that's also building up over time. Think about like 70% of what you're thinking has been repeated from the previous day and the previous day before that. So a lot of these things are already floating in your mind. It's basically the reason why it comes to you is because it needs to get out and you're giving it that outlet. So it's sort of like a blow off valve. So if you're inspired in the UI, just go do that. It's been in your mind for a while. It needs to get out. If you're in the code moment, just get it out. I just probably do more so than ever. But it also creates this other paradigm of like, you're just doing too much stuff and it's not really focused. So I'm still struggling with that, to be honest, especially, but I'm trying to wrap things around a project saying, okay, I have a creator workflow. I want to accomplish these things, right? Theoretically, should I be working on timestamps if I'm not completely done with my audio transcription stuff? No, but I do, I'm inspired and it helps kind of get me creative about things. And as I move through this space, they're sort of still intertwined and related, but like to me, I value creativity and output more than I try to figure out like, okay, I need to, sometimes I need to get into a forcing function, but right now there's such a boom in AI that I have to tinker, I have to play. And I feel like that's how my mind works with curiosity. So I don't know if that's like, I guess to kind of summarize, maybe like if you feel inspired, get it out because something's probably in your head. It's been in your head for a little while. You just have to get it out.
Yeah. You mentioned, and I fully agree, the need to tinker, try different tools, try different models, make sure that you explore the landscape and see what works because we are so early. There's no real well-defined best practices. Where do you get, you show us tools like V0, Google's AI Studio. Where do you discover these tools? Where do you get your AI news and information from?
Yes, really good question. So my primary resources are X, the platform, or formerly known as Twitter. I follow a lot of people on Twitter, whoever are building, if you're building stuff in AI, pretty much usually following you. And I also listen to a podcast called Thursday, THURSDAI, from Alex Volkov, a phenomenal show. It's probably the show, if you're into AI, that you should be watching, like seriously. This guy, the level of detail that he covers as far as like models, the people who he has on the show, like drops for AI, every Thursday, this guy is just dropping so much heat. And he has a newsletter, like that keeps me up to date if I'm not really paying attention to stuff, if I'm in builder mode. And it's just really important. I just kind of see on the cusp, oh, okay, there's this new model. I should be paying attention to this. And then another part I use is just YouTube. So, Matt Wolf is a really big YouTube person who covers a lot of these types of things. Matthew Berman is one person I've run into as well, who likes to cover these models in Tinker. Those have been like the two kind of pillars on YouTube that I've been using to get information for me. But what I find really interesting is all the people who are on X who are posting, even people who have 100 followers. If I see something interesting, I'm going to follow you. And I don't care what your follower count is. I care more about creativity and if someone's building something cool, because that kind of inspires me. And then I can kind of reach out and ask questions too. So yeah, I definitely leverage a lot the X community because there's a lot of people in AI who do things and really obscure people from like, anime characters to non-anime character people to people who are building cool stuff who only have like 100, a handful of followers. And then to that extent, I'll also say that the X Spaces is an interesting environment too. With these smaller builders, they're going to be online talking about their creations, and they could only be like 5 people in that space. I'll join in and start a conversation too, because people are they're sharing their same experience, and it's kind of like sort of almost like Discord channels in a funny way, but it's much more free.
Interesting. I think one of the things, reasons we wanted to start this show off too, is we realize how much talent there is out there on Twitter and out there just in the ecosystem. And there's a lot of people that are they don't usually go on the big podcast because they don't get the invite. And we found so many interesting people through this show that are building such crazy technology that have such low follower counts, like you're saying. And there's such fascinating people out there. And so that's why we try to find the most interesting, prolific builders out there and get them on the show. One thing that's tough for me with Twitter is, I'm sure with all of us in the AI space, is there's just such a fire hose of new releases constantly. And it's so hard to know like which things are worth your time because we only have so much time in a day. And we really have only so much time to try new tools out very rarely because we're using the tools we love. Do you have, is there some sort of like criteria or way that you select new tools to try, or is it just a curiosity thing again?
I'd say it's more a curiosity thing. I'm very lucky that like my full-time job is to figure this stuff out, play with AI, research. And so I feel like every morning, every evening, I try to dedicate time to just go play. And I feel like even though like I know at the back of my mind, I need to ship this app or do whatever I need to do, I still need to go play. And I feel like to me, I value that way more. And it's kind of hard. I don't have a direct answer, but I feel like, going to play and there is a need for this. I agree with you as far as like trying to reduce the noise because there can be sometimes too much noise. I have recently also taken some breaks just to get a sense of the gap of things. And what I have also discovered is that there is a bit of FOMO because a new model comes out. Everyone wants to play with it, but everyone's still back at the same problem, which is user experience. And what problem am I solving? And so, is this going to be something really interesting for my use case right now, or is it not? And can I leverage this, or is this something I should be paying attention to? And like the Gemini thing, the Gemini Flash Oshu update came out. I didn't immediately hop on it. I was just tinkering with AI Studio recently, and it's like, oh, there's a new model. This is cool. Let me just try this and see if it works. Oh my God, it's better than my current Anthropic workflow. So why not? And so, that's kind of like the rabbit hole kind of discovery. I'm also, just like you guys, have launched my own live streams. So it's really nice that people actually are reaching out now and saying, hey, I want to talk about my stuff, or I want to share this cool thing. So I kind of hear that from some friends. So I guess the moral of the story could also just be building a nice community of friends, right? Like you guys are in my community now and are friends, and you guys now bring me aware of things that I didn't know. It's like, I didn't know you guys built this cool tool to, leverage and, the pip install. You can just have all these things available super fast. It's like, man, that's awesome. Like, and so, you're constantly updating it. You're talking about things, having a little like, Spotify playlists of podcasts that you can just kind of listen to on the walk, kind of having that type of workflow. To kind of listen to these things, but it is a lot to digest. There is a big fire hose of things, but I think there is like builder moments, but there's also like moments of learning, and I feel like I'm just so into this stuff and very passionate. I'm very fortunate also to be able to be at this type of position to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, the passion is a must. Being able to have the endurance of just, like you said, consuming the fire hose, filtering out all the noise. But we do have a couple more things that we wanted to show off. So do you want to see a couple demos from our end?
Sure. Yeah. I'd love to see them.
Okay, I'll show off my little demo real quick here. It's kind of a silly one, but it's something I've always wanted. So I built a little app that I haven't played a lot with visual AIs, like visual image models very much. And so I wanted to play with Moondream because it's such a really interesting model. It's a teeny tiny little vision model and it's very performant. And so I built a little app. I guess I can talk about the infrastructure for, actually, I'm going to kick it off. Let's see here, Python main.py. And while that kind of goes off in the background, I can talk about how I actually built it. But it basically downloaded a little Moondream model, and it brings up this little dashboard. I should probably fix this little thing where it shows layout. But basically what it's doing is every 5 seconds, it's going to take an image from my webcam, and it's actually using the webcam over here. So the view is actually seeing me from the side, and it actually is looking at my screens, and it's looking at me. And so now it can tell right now that I'm focused and that I have good posture and that I'm sitting in my seat. And it has stats, right? So I had this thing running all day yesterday and the day before. Oh, I'm distracted. Oh no. But I had this thing running all day and I had a focus rate of 95%. But it was really interesting because it was fun to play with. Every 5 seconds it takes a picture. It runs it through Moondream. And my prompt for Moondream is basically like, here, there's an image of a desk here. I need you to tell me in 2 paragraphs about, like, I give it tons of text. I want it to make a bunch of text and describe everything it's seeing. It'll say what apps are on screen. It'll say if the person is in the image or not. And so I have this thing called present. It's bad language for this really, but if I'm not present, then it shouldn't be counting my stats there, right? So it's kind of like the military has a thing called ass and seat, you know, like am I ass and seat from when I start to work to when I'm not? So I'm not on my phone in the bathroom.
Get that
or
ass
anything.
and seat, boy.
This is gonna have like the sound. You just clip my microphone. Just get that. Get your ass in the seat, boy.
Okay, I think
Come
I
on.
will. But it's really fun.
Yeah, like tough dad. Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
think
awesome. Holy smokes, man.
we've talked about this
That's
on the show
cool.
before about how, like, I think if I was to have an AI productivity coach, I'd want it to be like kind of mean to me because I feel like I would respond better than that than like an AI that's like, oh, you're doing great. Try that. You know, no, I want someone to be like, hey, like you're saying, get your ass in seat. Why aren't you staring at your screen? Get off your phone. So I have in the prompt too, like, is this person staring at their phone? This came because there was a day last week that I spent like 2 hours on my phone during a day. And I was like, I can't be doing that. Like, I just can't be doing that. And so I was like, surely a webcam and a local model can figure this out. And so, but anyway, it makes this like 2 paragraphs of exactly what it's seeing on the screen. And then I actually use Llama 3.1, 7B, I think, or 8B, I think it is. And then I figured out a way to do structured outputs with it with Llama Index. And so it takes that big wall of text and it's like, okay, from these observations you've seen, is the person focused? Are they in their chair? And do they have good posture? And that's literally all it outputs. And then I just use that for stats. And so I could do a whole lot more with this. I could even say like, what apps is it opening or like all these different types of other things. But for right now, it's just posture and if I'm there essentially. But I think there's something cool here. I think there's even a whole like company that could be built around this on like a small camera that lives on your desk just to see if you're actually working. Everything running locally because you don't want this type of stuff going into the cloud. But anyway, that's what I built for this week.
I love that. That is absolutely cool. I love the take also of being the hard ass. Like, if you need some voice assets, I'd be so happy to participate. Growing up, I had a very tough father, and it was just like that for baseball. Like, it was just crazy. You know, you could pitch the perfect game, and it'd be like, there's always something that messed up. So, but like, it pushes you like a diamond, right? And you see these high-performing players like Steph Curry who play basketball, and their coaches aren't soft at them. They're yelling at them. They're pushing them and they know it. They know they should be better. And the same thing, oh, you should make it like Steve Jobs focused, right? Like at Apple, like, you know, this guy would just yell at people, right? And they produce some amazing stuff. So yeah, I like this idea. This is really cool.
And yeah, it's kind of fun. One other thing that I'll mention to this too, one of the reasons I built this too is because I knew you were coming on the podcast this week and I've seen some of your live streams about Cursor and building fast. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to see, I have this idea in my head. How fast can I go from idea in my head to working application? And so that's what I did. I built in Python because Python's fast, but I used Cursor Composer. I got the docs from Moondream. I just kind of pasted them in. And then I just turned on, I use Super Whisper, but I like voice prompting a lot because I hate typing and I don't think I'm as fast at typing as I am. But I just kind of turned it on. I was like, I want these kinds of things. Here are my different product requirements. Here's this and that. And then I took that wall of text that I made from talking to it and I put it into Claude and I say, can you make good product requirements out of this? And then I took that and put it into Cursor Composer, told it all of the things. And it actually only was 3 files. That's all it needed to be. And it was like 2 or 3 back and forths. Within 45 minutes, I had this thing working, which was crazy. And I haven't touched any more of that.
That is crazy.
It's
And look,
wild.
you even have UI in the terminal, which is hard to do, and have them aligned and that stuff. That is incredible.
And it did all of that
Wow.
for me. And I actually didn't change a single line of code from the UI or the way that these things would. I messed with the prompts manually because prompts are important. But in terms of how everything worked, I was like, no, no, no. From idea to actual app, I'm going to work on that. So yeah, it was about 45 minutes. I built it. I could have spent more time on it, but I was like, you know what? No, this is everything I needed to be right now. So that's that.
That's incredible. Great job. Wow. That's very inspiring that you're able to come up with this like idea. Like you said, it's burning your head or something. You just want to get it out and start to exercise that part of your brain. And I definitely want to encourage more engineers who are in this camp like you. I feel like the more experience you have, the better it is for you. And don't like think that you can't, it's going to take all this time to code. That's another thing. It's like, you just put it out there. Like that's a really great tip about the whisper thing. So you're just speaking it out, getting out those instructions as much as possible, handing it to an LLM to generate like this project plan basically, or these steps to get this accomplished or get these features, and then feeding that back into, a nice like cursor type of thing it produces. This is awesome. Wow. Just think about this. Like, yeah, I built this $1 million app just from, this silly idea of wanting to watch my posture. Whoa.
Well, I could have just spent 45 minutes watching an episode of something on Netflix, or I could just walk in here and blast out a quick app, And that's my favorite part about this podcast, or maybe my second part is probably talking to people every week. But my second favorite part of this is building every week. We get to build cool scripts, and they're usually pretty small, but we'll add this to the pip package too, and people can try it if they want to.
We were chatting the other day. He's like, yo, my posture, 95% the other day. Like I was locked in and focused. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is more than just demoware. This is actually like something he uses. So loved it.
Wow.
All right, Mike, let's see what you got here.
I made a tool called Fuzzy Puffin. But before I show you what Fuzzy Puffin is, I just want to talk about some of the technologies behind it. So there's this thing called Llama File, and I love Llama File because it allows you to convert an LLM in GGUF form into an executable that can be passed between different OSs. So if you're running a Mac and your buddy's running on a Windows, you can actually wrap up an LLM in a Llama file, send it to them, and they can execute it. So they have a list of ones you can download, which is a pretty good list. But what's really cool is you can turn different LLMs into it. So I took my favorite model, which is Hermes 3 from News Research, just the Llama 3.1 8B model, wrapped in the Llama file. So I have my LLM running locally. And then there's this other concept which I came across recently, grammar files, where you can actually have the LLM output a specific format or limited amount of vocabulary. So you can ask it whatever you want, and instead of a long-winded answer with preamble and extra context, it'll just be what you want. So if you want a yes, no, you can limit it to just that. Or you can limit it to a certain set of scripts. So with our pip package, the Toolies pip package, you can see we have 9 tools in it now, and we're building it all the time. It's expanding, so it's kind of tough for people to keep track of. So with Fuzzy Puffin, what it is, it's an LLM interface allowing you to use natural language to interact with the package. So you run it, you get Fuzzy Puffin, and then you just get with a natural language query. So let's say, I need some help with my upcoming product launch. Send through the voice, and then it processes that, and it goes through a list of scripts, and it realizes that it wants to call AI marketing plan, which is one Ty put together. So even though I didn't mention marketing plan or whatnot, because it knew the general concept we were going for, it fired it up. Let's try one other. I really need some help organizing my day. Fuzzy Puffin takes it, looks at all the mapping of the different scripts we have available in pip package, and knows to use AI prioritize. And I'll do one last example. I really want to get in touch with the guys from Tool Use. Fire that through, and it'll know to run Tool Use Contact, so they can reach out to us, whether you want to suggest a guest, request a topic, give them feedback. This allows you to no longer need to understand all the syntax, all the commands for a pip package. You can just tell it what you need to do, and it will route you to the best script to accomplish that. I did voice separately. Think about throwing voice into it since Ty put in shallogram in there. But this is just the abstraction that allows you to have a fuzzy function to operate your computer rather than have to be very deterministic with the way you command it. So that's my latest addition to the package.
Wow, that's so, so cool. I love that you guys are actively building because that helps you understand all these different types of things. I saw a llama file at the AI engineering conference earlier this year, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And, you're kind of like some of the first use cases I'm seeing of actually making something really useful because that's my problem too, is I develop a lot on the Mac, but my friends have PCs. So how would I give the script to have them run it, right? It's like, oh, so I like this idea that you're using with Llama file to kind of spread this around. And then this other thing, I mean, there's so many potential possibilities here of taking this and then having some type of tool use just for your machine, right? So yeah, open interpreter, these other types of things that can control your computer. And so now you're giving an open interpreter like system, which means that you can just give it some voice commands to run very specific tasks on your computer that you say, I always do this script or I always do this type of thing on my machine. Go do that. So I like that workflow. That's really, really cool. Amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, one thing with Open Interpreter that we love is it will dynamically generate the script. So you can go from absolutely nothing to functionality in action. With this, it takes your existing scripts you have. So say, you're using Cursor, put together something, but then it allows you to use whatever natural language you want to route towards there. So it's kind of like two different sides of the same coin, but satisfying a different use case.
Wow. That's inspirational. This is so
Super
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm honored that it picked my scripts too, Mike. I think
Hey,
that
you put
means I
together some good
win
ones.
this week, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We have this little weird competition where every week we're like, all right, who won the demo this week? So that's what we play into every week. We really want to make at some point. I guess I'm kind of spilling inner secrets here, Mike, but that's all right. If people are listening, that's fine. But we want to make like a LLM judge that every week would mark whichever demo's cooler. And there's probably some sort of cool like hackathon that you could create where everyone makes submissions, but it's all judged by LLMs. I think it'd be super interesting. Take the humans out of it and just let the LLMs pick.
That's a really cool idea.
Well, that was pretty fun. Is there anything else we want to cover this week?
Yeah, I think as far as everything that's going on, I mean, we're almost at the year mark when GPT-4 has been launched, right? Isn't that really interesting that a year ago, I feel like today, like, Sam Altman was being ousted and going to come back to OpenAI. GPT-4 was just released and kind of changing the world. People thought like, computers were going to take over. The people's processing for coding is, improved quite a bit. And then, like several months following that, just kind of recounting the history here of what just kind of happened this last year. And then what's happened like from there to the last like 3 to 4 months since Claude Sonnet 3.5 came out to improve coding, right? I feel like that was that moment 3 to 4 months ago that we're all going to be talking about where like, not only did we have code and we stopped begging the LLMs to, please, 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 I'll tip you $20 to finish this piece of code to that it just now does the code. I always like to try to think more into the future of like, what is it the things that, those kids are going to be talking about? Because it feels like every year in AI feels like 7 years in normal lives. And these are the types of things that like, we have to think about as far as like, as these systems continue to improve, we have to tie together all our different experiences to make them even more rich. So like the capabilities are there, and then we have to then tie in these types of, techniques to produce really great app experiences. So I encourage everyone to just go build. If you have some idea in mind, like, I'm just so impressed with the two of you guys. You're just like, I have this idea, I'm going to build it really quick this week in a couple of voice prompts and, talking to Claude or Cursor or whoever your choice of IDE, you can produce code. And to me, code is like the magic thing that you can produce that just kind of out of thin air, you produce economic value. And typically you'd have to go plant a seed, wait for that to, water, germinate and everything, and it produces some economic value. You would have to work with your hands and get wood and put it together to make a house and produce economic value. Where today, it's literally your mind and your voice, and anything that you can input into a computer, you can have some economic value out. And I definitely encourage people to go build as much as possible. If you have ideas in your head, even if it sounds silly, just go build it. You're going to learn a lot in this process, and don't give up. I feel like that's really important. Sometimes you'll run into an issue, you're debugging it. It's just part of the process. And this is kind of like lifting weights. If you've never lifted weights before and you hit a bug, you're going to run into that. Search for ways how you can debug it, reach out to start building communities around you to help, get these types of people. People are really willing to help. People have helped me throughout my lifetime to help me get to where I am today. And I want to help others as well to do the same. And I'm so glad that you guys have this type of platform and this show available to reach out and to build that community, to encourage others to build. And I encourage you to continue to share back what you know with the rest of the world, because internet will live on forever, and this conversation will be part of some type of AI system in the future as well.
100%. I think the last year's been crazy. I think like there's been clear improvements in like language models and text, obviously, but I think it's the most clear in like image models, video, audio. Things like Suno came out, and that was just kind of something. And now you hear a song and you can't be 100% sure if it was human generated or not. Like it's that good. And video too. Like I have been fooled on YouTube Shorts on videos that I'm like, I have to watch it back the third or fourth time, and then I realize it might be AI. But we're at that level of quality in both audio, video, images. Like it's been such an insane year, and it feels like every month there's a new thing. I mean, Stable Diffusion 3.5 just came out, and the new Flux models, and I don't know, super crazy. I'm wondering how, if this was this LLM wall that the people keep talking about, and how GPT-4, and yeah, I see you shaking your head, Mike. I kind of feel the same way. I mean, maybe there's some amount of wall, but I'm scared for the wall because we're gonna blow right past it, I feel like.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
there's approaches to things that are the reason kind of why we build is because it takes a village, really. It's not going to be a single company. It's not going to be one person breaking through. It's going to be the world coming together and figuring out new techniques for how we should be doing things. And I think that's what's kind of fun, is that like all can play and we find new things. And literally, I'm still blown away how like, ChatGPT is sort of an accident. It's like this paper was published many years ago about, attention is all you need. And how that like, that single thread of things has now birthed this whole era that we're using today. And then there could be something that's already out there that, it's already been published, and we just have to do that, right? It was like, who knows, right? And people are now actively in this discovery phase. So yeah, it's really cool.
And just to echo what you said, Ray, I encourage everyone, keep experimenting, building, sharing, and we're just going to come to something really cool. Before we let you go, is there anything you want to share with the audience? Any ways they can keep up with you?
Totally. Yeah. I definitely go check out Ray Fernando 1337. You can find me on X. You could also find me on YouTube. RayFernando.ai if you want to stay up to date with all my latest blog and postings and things there. I'm going to be launching raytranscribes.com very, very shortly. So by the time this podcast comes out, just go check out raytranscribes.com. If you are a person creating social media or posting stuff out and you need transcripts done, hit me up, because I'll actually be able to get you a 50% discount. I want to encourage people who are in this space to make it as fast as possible to get those transcripts. As you can see how rich your transcripts can turn into blog posts and other things, that's just the first step of many. And this is something that I'm building to give back to folks as well. So yeah, raytranscribes.com. Check out rayfernando.ai, and on socials, rayfernando1337 is probably the best handle you can find.
And definitely check out your live streams. I've been a huge fan of them. It's always fun to drop in, and lots of knowledge there.
Cool. Yeah, that's right. Yes. The live streams. Yeah. I do live streaming, interviewing guests just like you guys, and building stuff live as well, and just kind of really having fun, sharing my passion back. So yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on the show. This is a huge pleasure, and I'm just honored. I'm cool. I'm excited to be one of the guests here before you guys reach 1 million views. This is going to be really cool to look back and be like, yeah, I was like some of the early guests here.
Well, thank you so much, Ray. We appreciate all the kind words, and we'd love to have you back on in a future episode.
Cool.
But yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks for being on.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.